I was going to do my video on sourdough. Now, I don't tolerate grains, any kind of grains, well at all. With wheat, I get anaphylactic shock after I've had it in my system for about 3 days. With corn and rice and that kind of thing, I get headaches within a few hours of eating it, and it's a pretty bad headache. I actually went to the doctor to get tested to see if I had a brain tumor, because I had been eating a lot of corn and rice, and there wasn't anything wrong with me, but I just figured out that every time I ate corn for lunch, I would be really sick afterwards with a lot of pain in my lymph and that kind of thing. So I don't eat grains. So how am I going to make sourdough for my family? Because it's one more expense and one more source of garbage and that kind of thing. My goal is eventually that I won't have packaging. That the only packaging that I'll have is a little bit of plastic that I can't compost from when we butcher our animals. That's a big goal. I know that's a huge goal, but that is my goal. And so, like the plastic and everything that you get with bread, I don't want that. I want everything to be made in my home. And so and there's the cost. Even though it costs me $1.50 to buy a loaf of bread, I count into that the fact that I have to go into town to get that loaf of bread, and it's one of the last things that I actually go to the grocery store for right now is bread. Right now we're spending $30 a week on groceries at the actual grocery store, and if you count all the groceries we buy, including our local cheese and our local milk and our local meat, we're spending $50 a week on groceries, and that's eating as nice as you can at any restaurant. I mean, those are prime cuts of meat and fresh vegetables and artisan cheese. We're spending $50 a week. So one of the reasons I go to the grocery store now is because I'm celiac, and having the dust in the air from the bread is something that stays with me for about 2 weeks. It gets on my clothes, it gets in my hair, and not only that, because I can go shower, it's on all the surfaces in my kitchen at this point, and so I'm being exposed to it constantly. Even though I'm not eating it, I'm being exposed to it constantly. And so this was a big experiment. First, I had my husband buy me just a bag of flour. It needs to be unbleached flour. The bleaching harms your sourdough starch. I had him just buy me a bag of white flour and bring it home. And I made my bread with that. And this is an English muffin that I made, and it turned out really nice. The book that I use is a sourdough cooking book, but the last name of the author is Wood, W-O-O-D. But these are squishy. They're squishy and they're nice, and they're really nice. And his recipes in his book are really good. And I made this a month ago, I think, and I just have kept it frozen since then. With the sourdoughs, you do have to keep them in the fridge or in the freezer because they don't have the preservatives in them and the mold deterrents like the store-bought bread. You can put store-bought bread in your cupboard for 2 weeks, probably even 3 weeks, and it won't mold. Sourdough will mold within days, probably within 24 hours. So the first thing I did was with the white. I just wanted to try it with something sterile, something that I knew pretty much what the result would be. And it was okay. The start didn't seem terribly happy, but the English muffins turned out good. The big bread rolls that I made, big rings of bread, didn't turn out well. I added too much flour, and the sourdough couldn't digest it well. It wasn't a wet enough dough. And I did have flour all over the kitchen, and I did have an itchy throat for a week, and I got a little bit puffy from having the flour in the kitchen. So that was a no. So this last Sunday, I had my husband grind the flour for me, and I had to go down and sit on the table for him because we don't have it anchored very well. And it does take some grunt work, but it's a really nice wheat grinder. I have tried to use the electric wheat grinders, and they throw flour everywhere, so I can't use them. In fact, I probably need to just sell my wheat grinder. For one thing, it's super noisy, and absolutely hate it. I hate it. It's noisy, it's dusty, it's nasty. And it heats up the grain really hot, and I don't know if I like that or not. Anyway, so my parents gave us this really big fancy hand wheat grinder that you can also set up to a bicycle or a motor, and I'll go show it to you before I finish the video. But it makes a thicker grind. It's not as powdery as regular flour, but my sourdough start adores it, just loves it. And I did my recipe, and I think, yeah, I did a video on that I actually read out the recipe for you. The way that it worked this time, though, was that I did my sponge. I put the flour on top of it, and I used a rubber spatula to work it in, and I didn't knead it. I just worked it in with the spatula. And I let it sit, and then anytime the flour had to be used, I worked it in with the spatula. And it actually formed a really nice dough. It's a wet dough, but it formed a nice dough. And this is what came out of it. It's the spread. My kids love it. And my youngest daughter hasn't had a reaction to it yet. I haven't tried it myself. I think with the coarser grind